Hello and welcome to this video at StockCharts TV. My name is Julius de Kempenaer and I'm a senior analyst at StockCharts.com as well as the director of RRG research in Amsterdam. It will be no surprise that I will be talking about relative rotation graphs or RRGs. So what we'll be focusing in this video. The first thing is, what are we actually looking at? So I'll give you a quick recap. Not too long, there is much other material on the site for that. Then I want to go into where can you actually find RRGs on the system, because there are multiple ways to access RRGs and I'd like to share them with you because maybe you haven't found all of them. Then I will want to show you how you can operate the RRG tool. There's quite a few functionalities and bits and pieces and tricks that you may be not aware of, and hopefully I can show you something new. Then, how can you save RRG charts? If you have set them up to your liking, to your time frame, to whatever setting you have made, how can you prevent yourself from having to do this time and time over again? There is a tool for that. There is a way how we can do that. And finally, I'd like to show you how you can actually connect RRG back to your regular charts, the charts that you are using, to your workflow and to what you are comfortable with. Because I think one of the basic premises, one of the most important things, at least for me in presenting RRG to other people like yourselves, is that I don't want to tell people that RRG is the only tool in the world, that you should drop everything else because you have just found the next best thing, because that's really not true, unfortunately. But I think it will help you to get a handle on the bigger picture and to get a better overview of your portfolio or the universe that you are studying. So by actually connecting RRG back to your regular workflow, back to your regular charts, we can make it a useful tool that really adds value to your process. Let's have a look at our first RRG, relative rotation graph. This RRG shows you the 10 sector ETFs for the US market. And the benchmark is the S&P 500, is SPY. Now what are we actually looking at? We're looking at 4 quadrants, which are labeled leading, weakening, lagging, and improving. And on the axis you will find the JDK RS ratio and the JDK RS momentum. Now the JDK RS ratio is a measure of relative trend, and the JDK RS momentum measures the rate of change, the momentum of that specific trend. Now, if something shows up inside the leading quadrant, it means that that sector, that security, is in a relative uptrend versus its benchmark, and that uptrend is still being pushed higher by strong momentum. As we all know, momentum is a leading indicator. Rate of change is a leading indicator. So the first thing that will happen is that your rate of change will start to roll over, and it will eventually push that sector into the lower right-hand quadrant, which is the weakening quadrant. That means that the relative uptrend versus the benchmark is still intact, but it's losing strength, it's losing power. If that loss of momentum continues, eventually that sector will rotate into the lower left-hand quadrant of the plot, which is the lagging quadrant. In that quadrant you will find the sectors that are in a relative downtrend versus the benchmark, and that downtrend is still being pushed further down by weak momentum. Again, just like at the other side, at the positive side, in times of weakness, the first time that will happen is that your rate of change, your momentum will start to curl upward, and it will send the security, the sector, towards the top left-hand quadrant, which is the improving quadrant. And inside the improving quadrant you will find the sectors that are still in a relative downtrend versus their benchmark, but they're gaining strength, they're improving in strength, they're picking up momentum. And eventually that will push them back into the top right-hand quadrant, into the leading quadrant. And then you will have completed a full cycle, a full rotation from leading through weakening, through lagging, improving, and back into leading. That's how you read a relative rotation graph. Now, where can we actually find RRGs on the website of StockCharts.com? Let's go to the home page, and for this purpose I have logged myself out of my account, so this is something that someone will see who is not logged in to an account at StockCharts.com. The first where you can actually see RRGs is under the Free Tools menu. If you click the Free Tools, you will find that RRGs are available as a chart format, together with perf charts, pointer figures, candle glance, seasonality, the works. And you will find relative rotation graphs on the right hand side a little bit down. Just simply click Launch RRG Chart. This is what everybody can see. Even a non-subscriber at StockCharts.com can see this RRG, and it covers a number of major market indices. You will see that this chart is empty. There are no real controls. You cannot change the universe, you cannot change the benchmark. You can play around with the functionality, which we will get into again later. But this is a bare bones RRG chart showing you a number of major US market indices. That is the free version of the RRG chart on StockCharts.com. Now let me log into my account and see what the difference is between the free version that we are looking at right now and the version of RRG that's available for our paid subscribers. Okay, so now we're back at the home page for someone who is logged in to his StockCharts account. Welcome, Julius, it says. Now let's go again to the free tools and the RRG as we just had it to notice what the differences are. So if I launch the RRG chart, it will load up again with the major market indices as we've seen earlier on. But now we actually have a few extra boxes. And I will get into these extra boxes later on, but just for now, just make a mental memo that a logged in user has extra functionality available. So that's the first way how you can actually log in or get a relative rotation graph on your screen. Free tools, scroll down, launch RRG chart. That's the first way to open up an RRG. For the second way to access relative rotation graphs, we go to the, well, we've just seen the homepage of StockCharts.com. You usually get there when you are not logged in and you go to StockCharts.com, just the homepage. You may have noticed that if you are logged into your account and you click on the logo, i.e. you want to go to the homepage of StockCharts.com, that it's a different homepage when you're logged in than when you're not logged in. We call this the control center, the homepage for members. So click on the StockCharts logo, will bring you to your dashboard where everything is that's in your account where you have access to. And where we're going to work right now is the control center. And the second way, the second manner to access relative rotation graphs is from the control center. And the first one is from your chart lists. As a member, you are entitled to have chart lists. And if you click on chart lists in the control center, it will scroll down to your number of chart lists. You will see that I have a bunch of chart lists. And I can select a chart list. Let's say the Dow. I have a chart list that holds the 30 Dow stocks. I've got one for daily bars and I've got one for long-term bar charts. I got a ton of these lists. Now, for demonstration's sake, let's stay with the Dow 30 daily bars. I can go over to the column View List, and that drop-down offers me a number of opportunities, a number of ways to view at that list. And hey, you may have guessed it, one of these opportunities, one of these options is RRG. So let's go there. If I click RRG for this chart list, it will open up an RRG for all the stocks in my Dow 30 daily bars chart list with a number of standard settings. You will see that I will now not have the option to change my universe. I cannot add or delete ticker symbols. That's because this version of RRG is tied to my chart list. The benchmark is defaulted to the S&P 500. As this is the Dow 30 universe, I'd like to look at it against the Dow Industrials Index. So that would be $INDU. If I hit that and I do update, then it will give me the RRG versus the Dow Jones Industrials. Now the table below shows you all the names in the list. And I'm sure, like me, you maybe in a list you have duplicate ticker symbols. So you have, I don't know, here Nike, you have a daily chart with some indicators, and maybe you also have a weekly chart of Nike with some other indicators, or you have another daily chart of Nike with a different set of indicators or with annotations, I don't know. Anyway, you have 2 times a Nike chart in your chart list. The RRG tool is smart enough to filter out those duplicates, so it will only give you the RRG with the ticker symbols that are on the list. So no matter how many Nike lines you have in your chart list, it will only show up once in your RRG chart. So the second way to find an RRG chart on the system is through the control center and then go to chart list. If I'm in here, I can easily change my list by simply going into the drop down, which will again give me all my chart lists. And let's say that I, for example, want to go to my S&P sector ETFs, which is a very popular RRG. And here you will find my chart list that holds the sector ETFs. I have a ton of charts of my chart list of every single security in that list, but you will see that the RRG only holds the top 10 or 11, in this case, sectors for this particular occasion. So that's the second way to look at RRGs. Go to the StockCharts Control Center, top left, go to your chart lists, and then for any available list, you just go to View As in the drop-down and you select RRG. That is the second way to access relative rotation graphs on StockCharts.com. Now, for the third way to access relative rotation graphs, we go back to our member dashboard, to our home page when you're logged in. By the way, you may have noticed that clicking on the StockCharts logo will bring you to this dashboard, but also the member dashboard option. If I click this, you will see that you will get exactly the same page. There is no difference. So the StockCharts.com logo and the members dashboard, when you're logged in, will bring you to the same page. The third way to access relative rotation graphs is also under the control center. It's inside this box, but we have to scroll down a little bit and go to charting tools. So here under charting tools, you will find all the tools that we have on StockCharts.com, and one from the bottom is RRG charts. Again, we click RRG charts here and it will go open up the basic RRG chart with the major US indices. That's the defaulted RRG chart that you will always see. So the third way to open up an RRG, to access an RRG, is to go to the StockCharts member dashboard, go to the charting tools, and select RRG charts. For the fourth way to access RRG charts, we have to go back to our member dashboard again and into the control center, and then we scroll down past charting tools all the way down to reports and analysis tools. And there you will find, as one of the options, Sector Summary. Now, if we click Sector Summary, a page will open, a table will open with the main US sector indices. And there are a couple of links to an RRG chart on this page. The highest level one you will find here at the bottom right of that table. It's the Sector RRG. If we click on that, it will open up an RRG for the main sectors. Easy. If we go back to that same page, you will note that on each line there is a small RRG icon. When you hover your mouse over it, you will see RRG. For every sector there is an RRG icon. Now if you click on that RRG icon, and in this case we're going to do it for the technology sector, it will open up an RRG that holds the industry groups that belong to the technology sector in this case. So here you will find an RRG holding the industry groups that reside under the technology sector index. If I go back one level up and I change this to, I don't know, let's say the energy sector. I click the RRG link for the energy sector. It will open up an RRG with the industry groups that belong to the energy sector. You can change your benchmark to, for example, in this case, the energy sector, which would in this case be XLE. Gives you a little bit more meaningful chart. But this is how you can quickly access the industry groups on an RRG from the sector summary page. So if we recoup, go back to the dashboard, scroll down in the control center to the sector summary. From the sector summary, you can go to a sector RRG that creates an RRG for all these ticker symbols, and every RRG icon on the individual lines will open up an RRG holding the industry groups that belong to that particular sector. So that is the fourth way to access RRGs on StockCharts. For the fifth option to access RRGs, we have to move over to the right-hand side of the screen under Market Movers. This is a very handy table that allows you to get a quick handle on what's going on in the markets on a particular day. In this case, it's showing me the top 10 most active stocks inside the S&P 500. I could change that to the strongest gainers or the strongest losers. Ooh, wow. Twitter, Juniper. That's not very good. This is a bad day. Anyway, if we go back to most active, the top 10 most active stocks inside the S&P 500. And if you look below the table, there is a link to an RRG. Clicking that link opens up an RRG showing you those particular top 10 stocks. And these are the most active stocks on a day until now. That could change during the day. So this makes this way of accessing RRGs a dynamic way of creating RRGs, because this top 10 will not be the same during the day, but it will also definitely not be the same from day to day or from week to week. So this is a easy way to look at an RRG of stocks that are actually moving in the market. We could change the universe from the S&P 500, let's say, to the Dow, and now it will give me the top 10 most active stocks inside the Dow Jones Index. Again, access it, you'll get it. What I always like to do is bring my benchmark to my universe. So in this case, we're looking at the top 10 stocks inside the Dow Jones, so I'd like to change that to $INDU. You will see it doesn't make a lot of difference, but it just shifts everything around a little bit, and I think it just makes sense to look at it at the proper benchmark. So again, the fifth way to access RRGs, over on the right-hand side under Market Movers, You can change this to anything you like. The top 10 you can change to scooters. So the top 10 and scooters will give you access to RRG. If you go to the ticker cloud, there is no link to RRG for obvious reasons, nor is there for the decision point signals, and no for the predefined universe. So only for the top 10 and the scooter rankings, you'll be able to access an RRG. And clearly the final options are to change it to the biggest gainers for that day or the biggest losers for that day for that specific universe. And I find this a good exercise. If I run an RRG on the biggest losers, I can see if there is anything that I may like. You know, so like Disney, HD, they look pretty good to me on this RRG. They're the biggest losers for the day. Is that something that worries me? I don't know, maybe not, but I can get a handle on what's going on. It alerts me to stuff that's going on. It alerts me to potential big moves, and I can go from my RRG to my regular workflow. For the sixth and final option to access relative rotation graphs, it's probably the way that's the option that's most overlooked, is right in front of your face. It's actually the top box where you can enter any symbol or company name to bring up your chart, your sharp chart. Something that most people will do is type in SPY and just hit enter to run the chart that they like to see. We can also change the sharp chart to an RRG and stick in a ticker symbol like the energy sector that we looked at earlier, and it brings up an RRG with only one ticker symbol. Now if we know what we want, we can actually stick in a few more. So if we go back to the RRG chart and let's say energy, industrials, staples, and we hit enter, the system will give me an RRG with those three ticker symbols. So that's the sixth and final way to access RRGs. As we've seen, there are a number of ways how we can access relative rotation graphs on the system. Now let's see what all these control buttons on the RRG chart allow us to do. First of all, if I bring up this basic RRG chart, you will see the symbol box, and we can basically use it as we please. We can stick in any ticker symbol that's available on StockCharts.com for rendering as an RRG. The same goes for the benchmark box. In the benchmark, we can stick in any ticker symbol that we want to operate as a benchmark for the specific universe that we are looking at. Now, I know you're all very hardworking, and you got a lot of fantasy on what you would like to see and how you'd like to put things together. But for those of you who don't want to go through that effort, we have a number of pre-selected groups. So in this drop-down box, you will find a number of pre-populated RRG universes. One of them, for example, is the S&P 500 sector ETFs. Go to that drop-down and you will find an RRG that is populated with the RRG ETFs. Not too long ago, I've added one for asset allocation, which is a way to use RRG I think is very useful. We will be talking about that a lot more in the various webinars on StockCharts TV and in my blogs. So if you click on that, it will open up an RRG for a number of asset class ETFs or ticker symbols. So very useful are the pre-populated groups for the various members. So if you click on one of these drop-downs, XLE members, what will happen is you will get an RRG that is pre-populated with the members of the energy sector, and it has immediately attached the benchmark XLE. So with this, you can quickly drill down from a high-level sector to the individual members at a stock level of that particular sector. There's a few more. There's some Canadian stuff. There are some US industry indices. But what I'd like to show you as well is the Dow 30 Industrials. By the way, these groups will be updated when these indices or the population changes. So here is again the Dow 30 RRG, and for those of you who are a little bit more exotic, for example, we have currency-based RRGs. It's a very specific way of looking at RRGs, has a little bit more to it. The most important thing to note for currencies is a special benchmark, that's $1. That's a line that is always 1. You will find more explanation about this in various blogs, and we'll probably do some other videos, and it'll come back in Market Watchers Live on StockCharts TV from time to time. Now if we go back to the sector ETF RRG for demonstration purposes, we've had all the boxes here. The next one is the duration. So you can choose between 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years. That's the amount of history that the system will load for that particular universe of ticker symbols. Now remind you, the more ticker symbols you have and the longer the date you set, the longer your system will need to recalculate and render that graph. The final choice on the top line is the duration, is the periodicity of the chart, which in this case is weekly, and we can change it to daily. Again, the difference between daily and weekly RRGs is probably a video in itself. There is more to find on the site, but here is where you can switch between a daily version and a weekly version of the RRG chart. You can see the difference here. These are the 10 sectors. This is the daily version, and immediately we can see the interaction here and scroll that through time, where you can see the rotation of these various tickers around the benchmark. So this is the daily version, and if we switch to the weekly, we will get a different picture. It's a longer term picture, it takes longer term rotation. So this is weekly, switch to daily, update, and there you go. Here is your daily version of that chart. We've already shown you that this scroll chart of the benchmark allows you to scroll back and forth through history. You can do very quickly or very slowly. Now I am holding my mouse key, my left mouse key down. If I'm here and I lose it, I can use my control arrows to step through the universe. So arrow right or arrow left helps me to move through the universe on the RRG. Let's bring that back to the right hand side, switch it to a weekly, update, and there you go. Now underneath the scroll charts you will find a few other controls. The first one is the tail length. In this case it's set to 5 weeks, and we can use the scroll, the slider I should say here, to shorten or to lengthen that period. It goes up to a maximum of 30 weeks, and you'll see that it becomes a little bit messy. So I always recommend people to adjust the tail length to the number of elements in the universe. So if you have a medium number of ticker symbols like this, you could, I don't know, 5 to 7 weeks. If you would, for example, use the Dow 30, it might be a little bit messy if you have 30, so I recommend going, a little bit shorter, like 2, 3, 4 makes, etc. It's up to you. Whatever you find pleasant, whatever you feel comfortable with. What it does help you is to see the rotational picture of all these stocks around that benchmark. Underneath the tail length, there are a few buttons that we can hit. Now the left-hand side is animate. We've already seen that by scrolling. This button will automate that process for us. If you hit it, it will automatically scroll through history and show you the rotation of this element, of the elements in this universe against its benchmark. You may have noticed that during the animation, some of these elements, some of these stocks are scrolling off the canvas, something we don't really like to see. The buttons plus and minus allow us to zoom in and zoom out of that canvas. So if I zoom out, I will get anything on the plot. So if I now scroll, everything will be there. If I zoom in, I can see and I can look and study the detailed moves for individual stocks, and I can grab this canvas and move it around to view rotations of individual stocks. Now the right three buttons will help me to go to predefined settings. If I go to fit and click it, it will immediately fit all the tickers that are currently on the canvas inside the borders of my picture. So fit it will fit it at that particular point in time. If I scroll my mouse, some will go off, like the one over here, for example, and this tail of Walmart just misses a little bit of piece. I can again click fit it, and it will fit the universe for this particular point in time. In this case, it's the week ending June 1st. If I scroll again, here you'll see that a number have scrolled off. BA is about to scroll off. I fit it, it brings it back to that point in time. Now if I want everything to be on the graph for the whole period of time, I click Max. Max maximizes the canvas and calculates the amount of space that is needed to keep all the securities on the canvas during an animation. So if I now hit animate, you will see, and I'll do it again, that for the whole period, everything remains on the canvas. The thing is that if you do this for a longer period of time, for example, and I max it out and I hit update, it loads 5 years worth of data. And you can imagine that over the period of 5 years, there is a lot more space needed because you'll have some very big rotations. And if I animate it, you will see that some of these rotations go very wide, which makes it hard to read what's going on in the middle. It's very clear to see the wide rotations over time, very helpful when you're studying that universe, not very helpful if you want to zoom in on what's going on. And that's where, let's pause this for a while, that's where the control or center comes in. Center, I should say. It stands for center. What this does, it will center the axis at the center of the graph, and the axis will remain locked. So the 100, 100 will always be in the middle of the chart. And now watch this. When I hit animate, everything will stretch just as much as is needed in a horizontal or a vertical fashion to keep everything on there. So instead of the axis or the tails extending, it's now the axes that are extending or shrinking where needed to fit anything on the graph. So I think this is actually a pretty cool feature because it will give you a good grasp of what's going on, and it will adjust the scales to keep everything on the plot. So you can see it contracting and expanding over time. So these are the function buttons that you will find on the RRG page on StockCharts.com. So let's kill this, let's pause it, and scroll back to the end of the period here. Because what I now want to do is I want to go down a little bit. Let's bring this to, let's go to the sector ETFs. That's a nice overseeable universe. Shrink it a little bit. It's 10 sectors. So now my table is completely visible because this is where I want to go next to look at the table that we have here. The table holds all the securities that are on the canvas. You can play around with these columns and, for example, sort on them. So right now, the table is sorted on the tail. So it sorts them on per quadrant. So the greens are in the leading quadrant, the blues are in the improving quadrant, the oranges are in the weakening quadrant, and the reds are in the lagging quadrant. I can sort that up and down, and that's where you have your groups. I could also sort it on the symbol name. So now it's alphabetical. It will always put the benchmark on top, and then it goes B, E, F, I, sorted downward. If you have a longer list, I find this useful. If you know the ticker symbol and you don't exactly know where it is on the list, you sort it on the symbol name, and you can quickly find your ticker symbol. The same goes for the name. You can sort it on the name. In this case, it's not exactly the same, but here you will find you can sort the table on the naming of the particular sector. You can also sort it on price. Price from high to low or from low to high. That's not very meaningful. But what is very meaningful is the percentage of change. Now this is a column that we need to address. If I sort it on percentage of change, the percentage change in this case is the percentage change over the time of the tail. So in terms of XLI, the industrial sector, it gained 4.6% over the past 5 weeks. So that is this particular period here. XLI is actually pretty good, so it actually beat the S&P 500 over the past 5 weeks, but the trend is still very down. So this is where you got to be careful by reading it. XLE is actually in an uptrend and gained 1.8%, but you can see that it lost a lot of momentum. So this is a lot of price decline to bring this sector down against the S&P, which gained 2.4%. So you can sort on percentage change. And now watch, when I change the periodicity here, you will see that my percentage change will also change. So let's move this up all the way to 30 weeks. You will see a completely different percentage change column with ups and downs, etc. So this is now actually 30 weeks of performance of a particular sector against the S&P 500. So over the last 30 weeks, SPY gained 6.3% and consumer discretionary gained 13.8%, while staples lost 5.1%. Now if we do that over a more meaningful period, probably like 3 to 4, that's what you have. Another thing you can do here is you can actually toggle them on or off. If you have a big universe and you only want to see a few, then you can use these checkboxes to make certain symbols on your list visible or not. If you click on the candle icon on the left, it will open up a small pop-up chart of that particular sector. And if you click it, it will open up the chart, your default setting chart for that particular symbol. If you go back, then you're back to your chart. So it will show you a pop-up chart. If you click it, it will open up a big chart. These ones will help you to distinguish what you want to see or what you do not want to see. And now the one that I use very, very often is you can select a line and it will highlight the sector on your chart. All the other sectors will remain visible, but they are dimmed. So you will still be able to see the bigger picture and to get everything that's going on around it, but you'll be able to zoom in to the highlighted sector in this case. Now this enables you to set the tail length to something probably a little bit longer than what you may normally want to see. But as it's zoomed in, by the way, this is a very nice heart shape. That's awesome. This is we should tweet this out. We should put something on Facebook because, you know, you gotta love RRG for this. Don't you think so? I mean, who can come up with this? This is a real rotation, by the way. I didn't make this up. This is real performance. This is a real price. This is a real trend. What I can do is I can now click on another sector to inspect the rotation of that particular sector, and I can go down my list and see for all the individual sectors what's going on. If I click again on the sector, it will act as a toggle and bring it back up. So XLY, etc. Okay, if your list is a little bit longer, now everything is on my screen and I can access everything with my mouse. But if we change this, for example, to the 30 Dow stocks, my table will scroll off my screen. It's a little bit longer. So there you go. Now let's put this to 30 weeks, max it out. Everything is now on my list. I can click it. But what you will also note is when I go down here, I can actually use my arrow keys on my keyboard to scroll down the list. So now I put my mouse aside and I hit my arrow down keys. And it goes through the list. But you will also see that my RRG chart will scroll off the screen. Well, hey, that's not of much use, because now I still have to actually scroll back to see it. The secret is, and this is on a Windows machine, to keep your control key down and hit your down arrow. Then the page will be locked and fixed, and you will still be able to step through your individual stocks and inspect the rotations on the RRG. I believe on a Mac machine it is the command key. So if you hold down the command key and you hit the arrow keys, you can scroll down. Now I'm going down. Or I can go up, and now all of a sudden, we should see, there we are, come back through it. If you do it like this, I find it useful to keep the table sorted by tail, because it actually allows me to scroll through the universe per quadrant. So I don't have to worry where I am. I know that the next one will be very close. And here we go to improving. Everything. And there we go to weakening. It's sorted on color. It's not exactly on, make it clockwise. Maybe I can see if we should change that or can change that. But for now, it goes from quadrant to quadrant, which is already really helpful. And here's the leading. And now this is when we hit the benchmark line. That always gives you everything. And another one would bring me back to the top, and hitting Nike again would actually bring everything back on the canvas. So let's do it there. So now we've actually seen all the functionality of the RRG chart, and we've learned how you can actually toggle through the list of securities and inspect each and every individual rotation on the chart over time. When you have been playing around with the settings on an RRG, maybe you've changed the universe a little bit, added a few ticker symbols, removed a few ticker symbols, changed the benchmark, changed the periodicity, changed the time frame, whatever you did, when you want to come back to that particular group of settings, that particular configuration, you would have to do that all again. I mean, the drop downs will always be the same. So if we go to the S&P 500 ETFs, they'll show you this group of tickers, this benchmark for 1 year. It will have a 5-week tail, and that's it. Now, suppose that I like my RRG to have a long tail, maxed it out, and I like my RRGs dailies, so I update it. And here's my RRG that I would like to access basically from the start. I cannot do that from the drop-down box, because that will bring us back to the chart that I just showed you. There is a way to save this configuration for an RRG. If we scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is a link to what's called a permalink. It's basically a bookmark. So if we click that, a link will show up. I can do Control-C on my keyboard to copy that link. And now I can go, and in Chrome it's basically a bookmark. So in my folder, I want to add it. I'm going to name this one, and I'm going to call this one US sectors long tails. Done. All right. Now that group is over here, and you will see that I have a lot of predefined stuff, but here's the one that we have just created. That is, this bookmark is this RRG. Now let's see if it works. If we go back to the standard drop-down S&P 500, 5 weeks, 5 weeks tails, etc., etc. And now I go to my bookmark for the US sector's long tails. It opens up my RRG with those settings in daily. Bam, there you go. Now you can create a bunch of links, a bunch of bookmarks for your own workflow and how you like to look at stuff. I've got here a bunch. These were before we had the pre-populated groups. But for example, I've got here size indices. So this is an RRG that has a number of size indices to it, pre-populated. I have one for international equities, for example, EU countries. This is an RRG that holds a number of European equity indices versus the Stock 600, which is a major European stock index. With this setup, I can save my RRGs with different periodicities, different time frames, different look-back periods, etc., etc., and call them up with one simple, here's my RRGs, I had those. Let's look at the world, for example. One click and I have my RRG back. This one was fixed at some date that I didn't like, so I probably need to fix that link. It's all in that link here. You can fix it, you can create your own bookmarks, save them in a folder, and over time you'll build up your own portfolio, your own library of RRG charts that you would like to look at and fits your trading style, your investment style. Your longer term, you look at weekly, your shorter term, your swing trader, you look at daily, etc., etc., etc. This is how you can save particular settings on RRG. You just go to the permalink, copy that link, and put it in your browser as a regular bookmark, like you would save the bookmark to any internet page. For those of you who read my blogs or have seen my appearances on StockCharts TV as a guest in Market Watchers Live, you probably have heard that I encourage people to make RRG part of their workflow, to use it, of course, that's always nice, but also that I don't believe that RRG should be a standalone tool. RRG is a typical tool that you want to use in conjunction with the other tools that you are using. And what those tools that you are using are, that's none of my business. I'm around long enough to know that everybody who is an investor, everybody who is an analyst, everybody who uses technical analysis has their own way of doing stuff. We all have our own little perks and things that we like to look at, our own little routines. And I don't want to interfere with yours. What I would like to do is to give you a little bit of help, an additional tool to improve your workflow. That's different than replacing your workflow. Now, in order to do that, we need to connect RRG back to your workflow, your regular charts. How I do that on StockCharts.com is a bit of a trick. And it's not even a StockCharts trick, it's a Windows trick. But StockCharts allows me to do that. Here we have our RRG chart that we've been working out throughout this video. We've seen that I can click on this link, and if I hold down my control key, I can open up that chart in a different window. And it will open up the chart, which is my default format, which is a weekly price chart with what I call raw relative strength and the RRG lines plotted underneath. That's the way I like to start looking at my charts. Just the price, relative strength, and my RRG lines. It gives me almost everything that I need, but it definitely gives me everything that I want to see immediately on a chart. I can read from these RRG lines that the technology sector in this case is, the red one, the RS ratio is well above 100. The green one is about to cross over. It's 100.03. That's almost crossing over. So it's inside the leading quadrant, but heading towards the weakening quadrant and almost there. So I can, probably because I've seen a gazillion of these, constellations of lines, I can imagine where it is on the RRG chart. But it would be nice to be able to see that, because here is XLK. I can highlight it, and there you are. Here is your position of XLK on the RRG. But I have to flip back and forth to actually see that connection. Now here's a little trick. If I separate those two tabs, and what I do is I just drag it out. So I now have, basically I have two windows, two of my windows here. And what I do now is I hold down the Windows key, and at that time click or hit my right arrow, and it will actually position that window on the right side of my screen. It splits my screen in two and positions that tab on the right hand side. Now I have another tab, which is this one, and I'm going to do the same, hit the Windows key, but now I hit the left arrow key, and all of a sudden I have an RRG and my chart next to each other, and I can interact between the two and play with them. I can actually go in here, annotate my chart, do whatever I want, save the chart. There you go. I don't want to save it in that group. And go back. And there it is. Now, let's say that I want to look at discretionary. It's over there. The only thing I need to do, bring that back here, and in my chart list, here is S&P 500 sector ETFs, bring up XLY, because here are the charts. So XLY, discretionary, here it is, including my annotations, everything that I have on it. Let's see, Staples been doing very, very strong. We're talking July 27 over the last 5 weeks. So let's bring up my Staples chart as a regular chart in my chart list, including my annotations and everything I've got on it. So in this way, I can immediately visualize the whole universe, including highlighting the one that I'm looking at, and bring it back to my regular workflow, the chart that I like. I can do that. Let me do it, for example, here. What is this? There was 6 monthly bars. It doesn't really matter, but this is a daily chart, and I could do a daily here. So now I've got XLP on a daily chart, and now I've got XLP here. So XLP is probably here, coming into lagging, but picking up a little bit of momentum, and you see what's going on here. So in this way, I can very rapidly bring the two together, bring the RRG big picture to my individual RRG chart in my regular workflow and work my way through everything I've got. If I change my view to a different one, let's say that I've got the discretionary here, and I scroll through and I find the discretionary in this particular view all. Here it is. I've got it next to each other, and I could actually write a comment on the position at RRG, including notes on chart. Save it, and over time you will find that you will create a way to interact between the RRG and your regular charts and embed it in your typical workflow. And again, this is my setup. This is the charts that I look at. If you want to have a workflow or a setup with MACDs, RSIs, stochastics, DPO trends, the Chandi trend meter, scooters, what else there is on the system, go all out, put it on there, put your RRG on the left-hand side, and you'll be able to interact between your regular workflow and still keep an eye on the big picture provided by the relative rotation graphs. Anyway, this is how I often use the system. I hope you like it. I hope you liked this video. If you like RRGs, I'd like to point out the blog articles on RRG. There is a section with RRG charts. You will find me writing there roughly 3 to 4 times a month. My articles are a little bit longer term orientated. Again, I like to interact with people, so if you go into an article and you go down to the bottom and you feel there is anything you would like to say or to add, or you want to ask me a question, feel free to drop your note in the discuss area. I've got a habit to check regularly if there are any comments, and if there are, I will definitely reply, unless the discussion is closed. That happens after 7 days. If you missed me or we missed each other, feel free to hit me up on either Facebook or Twitter, or go to the scan channel on StockCharts.com, where I am an active member, and I'll try to add, here there is a question on RRG charts, etc. Oh well, you see, here you go. How did he do that? Here's the video. George, I'll send you an answer on scan. I'm going to close the video right now. I hope you all liked it. I hope you like RRG. If you like it, subscribe to the blogs, check back regularly, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and I hope to see you back very, very soon, either on the blogs or in Market Watchers Live on StockCharts TV. Thank you very much for now, and have a good day.